These figures belong to two paintings. On the surface, a woman opens both arms beside the newborn Christ. In the X-ray, the lower body of Christ on the cross appears above the same group. A shepherd looks past the child and up into empty sky. The canvas gives the reason. 5 main pieces were sewn into this wide support. 2 of the pieces had already belonged to another painted object. What happened here was more drastic than one picture being covered by another. An earlier crucifixion was cut apart. Its surviving figures were moved, separated, and made to serve a nativity. How does a sacred death become a sacred birth? And where is the rest of the first painting? Jacopo Tintoretto and his workshop. The Nativity. Painted in Venice in 2 campaigns, roughly 20 years apart. The whole painting. The finished picture stretches almost 3.5 meters from side to side. Its center is quiet. The child lies in a small pool of pale cloth, with Mary and Joseph close by. Their attention settles around him. The larger bodies do not all follow. The woman at the right reaches out. The bearded shepherd behind her turns his face towards the sky. At the edges, animals and smaller episodes spread the birth across a landscape. The surface asks us to read one moment. Christ has been born, and people gather around him. Yet its strongest gestures seem to answer something the surface no longer shows. The painting is now in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Its earlier church, patron, and commission are not known. A payment from 1571 records a Tintoretto nativity intended for the high altar of San Marco at Christmas. This wide picture has been proposed as that temporary work. Proposed, not identified. The object gives us evidence for how it changed. It does not give us a secure reason. Jacopo Tintoretto built a career around pictures large enough to alter the rooms that held them. In Venice, churches and confraternities needed canvases for altars, halls, and cycles that could run across whole walls. This was painting as architecture, devotion, and public theatre. It was also production. Supports had to be joined, vast surfaces had to be planned, commissions had to leave the workshop. Tintoretto could design the composition and paint its principal passages, while assistants carried other areas. On a large canvas, one name could cover several hands. The Boston Nativity records that division. The most resolved, reused figures belong to Jacopo's earlier campaign. Later passages are thinner, faster, and shared. The studio also reused materials. Canvas scraps could be sewn into supports, and even palette scrapings could return as coloured grounds. Economy was normal. But normal reuse does not make this history ordinary. The first painting belongs to the late 1550s. The Nativity took shape in the 1570s. Between those two moments, a finished or partly finished sacred object was dismantled. The route begins with what survived on the support. First the seams, then the figures beneath the surface, then the cross those figures once faced. Seams, figures, cross, cut. 2 campaigns. From the front, the Nativity reads as one very wide field. The cloth beneath it is not one piece. The MFA study records 5 main sections of twill across the painting, joined by vertical seams. At the far left, a 6th piece completes the corner along a diagonal. Some joins are construction, 2 are evidence. The second section from the left has damage along an edge now buried inside the picture. So does the 4th. These were not raw scraps cut straight from a bolt. The damage is consistent with old tacking edges, where nails once fixed the cloth to a wooden stretcher. An edge that began on the outside had somehow moved into the middle. The cloth had lived in an earlier support long enough for the tacks to leave their mark. Those two sections, B and D, contain the painting's largest and most resolved figures. A newer, darker piece now separates them. The support has already changed the question. Not what lies under the Nativity, but which parts of the Nativity arrived from somewhere else. The woman with open arms and the shepherd behind her occupy section D. On the surface, foliage and a tree rise over their shoulders. The technical report records bent legs and an arm inside that foliage. In the X-ray, they probably belong to an angel hovering above the woman. The form is faintly visible even through the worn surface once its position is known. The later paint did not erase it completely. The shepherd presents a different problem. His age and beard belong to the Nativity, but his lifted head still answers the earlier scene. Infrared reflectography shows broad, dark strokes beneath his drapery. They suggest a younger figure in a gathered cloak or vestment, perhaps an ecclesiastical person. The identity is uncertain. The change is not. Beneath the shepherd, the open-armed woman and the Virgin, conservators also found a transfer grid. A drawing could be squared, enlarged, and transferred one section at a time. Here, the grid belongs to the reused principal passages, not to the whole later surface. These figures were conceived together before the child, Joseph, and the outer landscapes joined them. The technical images have recovered an angel, an earlier standing figure, and the method that placed the principal bodies. They have not yet recovered the object of their gaze. The decisive passage sits beside the Virgin's face. On the surface there is open sky, and the Virgin looks beyond the infant. Before we read it, the X-ray source faces the painting, with film or a detector behind. The beam passes through every layer. Lead-rich paint absorbs more of it and appears lighter. A radiograph is not one hidden layer, it is the whole object compressed into one image. The conservators record knees and calves above her in the radiograph. Turned towards us, they belong to Christ hanging on a cross. The same painted woman now stands in two scenes. In the Nativity, she bends towards a child. In the earlier object, she looks up towards the adult body of Christ. Another man once stood beside her, also looking upward. He was painted out, perhaps because a second principal figure ignoring the infant made the Nativity harder to read. Above the Virgin, part of another angel survives beneath the landscape. A cross-section found flesh-coloured paint under the later sky and foliage. The figures had not stood on ordinary ground. Clouds rose around them and the base of the cross. When sections B and D are placed back together, broad cloud strokes continue across the join with almost nothing missing. The lower part of a tall, symmetrical devotional image emerges. Christ on the cross above clouds, supported by angels, with women and standing attendants looking up. Some identities remain uncertain. The structure does not. The strange direction of the Nativity's gazes now has a physical explanation. Here is the turn. The radiograph does not show one complete crucifixion quietly sleeping beneath one complete nativity. It shows the surviving lower passages of an earlier vertical object. That object was cut. The two principal fragments were separated. A new central section was inserted between them. More cloth widened the support at both ends. The old exterior edges became interior seams. Joseph was painted across old and new canvas, helping the later scene bridge its own construction. The result was a new horizontal object assembled from selected painted passages of the old one. A vertical crucifixion became a horizontal nativity. The bodies survived. Their first arrangement did not. The technical study dates the strongest passages in sections B and D to the late 1550s. They carry the Virgin, the open-armed woman and the standing figure, later changed into a shepherd. The central cloth is darker. Its child and Joseph belong to the later campaign. Joseph crosses the join and covers part of the crucified Christ's legs. The seam and the paint agree about sequence. X-ray and infrared images show the child and Joseph laid in with broad lines of lead white, a method closer to Tintoretto's workshop in the later 1570s. The child was first turned in another direction. The small scenes in the upper corners appear to belong to that later expansion. The animals vary in finish as well. Some are sharp and lively, others are barely resolved. The abbreviated lower body of the right-hand shepherd has been compared with a figure in Tintoretto's washing of the feet from the later 1570s. A probable workshop picture associated with Domenico may even echo the buried composition. May. It cannot identify the lost work. The cautious map is enough. Jacopo in the principal earlier figures, at least one assistant in Joseph and the child, probably another hand in the corners. One painting, two campaigns, several makers. The whole Nativity again. Its calm depends on a remarkable act of repair and redirection. The open-armed woman no longer has to be read as gesturing only towards the child. Her body carries the energy of the first devotional scene. Behind her, the fugitive angel remains under a tree. The shepherd's lifted face is not a lapse in attention. It is the surviving direction of an earlier gaze. Beside the Virgin, the cross occupies a space the surface has turned back into sky. The child and Joseph do the later work of gathering those inherited bodies around a new centre. The surface is neither a failed nativity nor a visible crucifixion. It is a complete later nativity built from passages of the earlier crucifixion. The technical evidence can reconstruct the lower part of the earlier painting. It cannot tell us why the picture was sacrificed. The missing upper section may have held most of Christ's body, more angels, perhaps further figures. Its actual composition is unknown. Was the first commission abandoned, refused, damaged, left unfinished, reused for a new need? The MFA study keeps each possibility open. So must the film. The seasonal San Marco Nativity is an intriguing candidate for the later function, not a solved provenance. What survives is more concrete: cloth, tacking holes, seams, grids, clouds that meet when two fragments are returned to one another, bodies first arranged around the cross, now gathered around the child. And one possibility remains. If the missing upper half was reused as efficiently as the lower one, it may still lie beneath another Tintoretto. Which painting should conservators X-ray next?